All right, you tell me when we start.
Whenever you're ready.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Movement Mindset powered by Station Athletics. I am Chris Hardenberg, kind of by myself, but kind of with JJ. So JJ and his beautiful mustache is usually the man behind the camera, but I have no friends today. So it's just me, a little solo cast action. But because of that, we thought it'd be a good idea where we're going to pull out some of those Q&As, right? So we posted, JJ, a couple weeks ago at this point?
Yeah, it's probably been like 4 weeks.
So a couple weeks ago, I also reached out to our staff via email and was like, hey, let's get some questions together. So we got a great response. Got a bunch of questions thrown our way. Some of them some of them were pretty in depth. And so I was like, ooh, that's going to be a full episode. So if you don't hear your question on this episode, guys, don't panic. That just means I thought it was like, okay, I need to set aside an entire episode for this. Or maybe it's a subject matter where I was like, I don't feel super confident speaking on that by myself. And I know someone who's more knowledgeable in that area. So I'm working on scheduling an interview with that person. So that's kind of where those questions went. And then some of the other ones are going to be here. So JJ on this episode is going to be tossing some questions at me. I don't know what order. I don't know which ones he's going to choose, and I'm just going to answer them to the best of my ability, and hopefully you guys take something away from it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these questions are pretty member related.
For sure.
100% like members can watch. And
which is great, because it's like, the reason why we did this was like, I want to talk on things that are pertinent to the people who are listening. And so, yeah, hopefully there's some nuggets of knowledge for people in this episode.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
First question coming at you
from
Nicole Y. Members may come to us with disordered eating. How can they meet their fitness goals without restarting unhealthy habits?
So that's a great question. So thank you for that, Nicole. It's also tough because it gets into the psychology of things. So great example is we had a member or someone sign up at one of our other locations. And in our challenge program, a lot of it is predicated on the results that they're looking for. We use an in-body scale. So we don't just look at weight, we look at a lot of other things. But we've had people in the past where the scale is really, really scary, and not just scary in the sense of like, oh, I don't like seeing my number on the scale, but like, no, it's extremely anxiety producing, and there's a lot of mental hurdles around it. So to speak on first, I guess, the scale. So for one person in particular pops into my mind. She was really nervous about the scale. She had a lot of mental roadblocks around it. And so we didn't force that issue. We said, okay, we were honest, right? That's going to make this section of the challenge pretty hard, one of our sections, without giving away too much info. But if you're willing to work with us, we'll still talk through some of your eating habits, give you little nuggets you can work on, different little food choices. But let's focus on the hurdle you're struggling with right now. That is going to be the easiest to get over, which is just getting into the gym. So we focused on that. And I think the overarching principle, and then I'll dive back into specifics, is take small bite-sized chunks and utilize what we know they can do without triggering something. And so that usually cycles around the gym. It's like, hey, let's come in 3 times. And we might even limit them, right? So during our initial 6 weeks, they can come in as often as they want, but people who have generally, again, guys, this is generalization, but generally people who have disordered eating habits or things like that have areas of their personality that can be obsessive. And so we try to take away some of that decision-making where we say, hey, you're only allowed to come in 3 times per week, and that's okay. So we focus on the gym first, and then we'll take, again, little things. So for this woman who struggled with the scale, we said, after conversation, her goal was to be able to step on the scale and not have it be an issue. And so we're like, okay, let's build towards that. For disordered eating specifically, again, we'd start with the gym, because the issues or the habits that they're struggling with generally are not around that. It's around food. So we want to get them started on the healthy habits of working out first, and then start to dive into the psychology a little bit of why they struggle with food. And so maybe it's, hey, let's start with the gym. You're only coming in 3 times per week. Then when we feel comfortable and they're in a rhythm, we use that person as the guide. Hey, do you want to talk about your food now? Yeah, I do. Okay, great. And so maybe we don't go right to a meal plan, right? Which we do for most people. Maybe we go to like, hey, what do things look like now, right? And so they might write out what they're eating now, and maybe we take things as simple as like, let's just say they're under eating. It's like, okay, cool. I want you to eat exactly the same way you are now, but you're going to add, 6 ounces of some sort of meat to your lunch above what you're eating now. Or, hey, you're going to drink a protein shake after you work out because you're not doing that right now. We want to make sure you're getting enough protein. So for folks to kind of pull it all back and boil it all down, for people who come to us with a history of disordered eating habits, the first place we generally start with is the gym and not the nutrition, because that, at least through conversations, usually isn't where the source spot is. And then once we get over that hurdle, then it's looking at, okay, what little bite-sized chunks can we take to make small behavior changes so that psychologically they can handle it and not fall into old habits. And so it does require a little bit of nuance.
Thank you, Nicole, for that question.
Shout out, Nicole.
Shout out, Nicole. Next, we've got Scott Kelly. What does it mean to understand the stimulus of the workout to properly scale, even if RX is possible, and then explaining to members why that is more beneficial than doing RX, but taking 3 times in length?
This is a great one. All right, so I hope Scott doesn't mind, but Scott recently started coaching at our Station Road location, which is where I'm at right now in Sparta, or we're at right now, not just me, where we're at. This is something that's super important. So to try to not get into the weeds too much, when it comes to fitness and programming in general, in our body, there's multiple energy systems at play. Now, they're not cut and dry, meaning when there's no real area where, okay, this energy system stops, it does not work, and then this one starts. They all kind of blend together. However, there are different time domains of workouts where one tends to be more dominant than others. So for example, if I was to do a 100-meter sprint, right? That's what I would generally call, with at least my education background, like an alactic sprint-based energy system. Then there's the lactic time domain, which is kind of like your middle, like your sucky time domain. So like if you were to look at track setting, right? Like a 400 or 800 is kind of in that range. And that's where, you are more utilizing, you're starting to utilize some oxygen, but it's a lot of utilizing your glycogen stores in your muscles. It's called lactic because through the what goes on in your muscles, it produces lactate. A lot of people think lactate is what produces the burning in your muscles. It's not. It's actually a fuel source for your muscles. At least in what I've read, and I could be slightly wrong on this, is that a lot of that burning comes from the hydrogen ions that are produced from utilizing lactate as fuel. But that's kind of the middle range. And then there's the long range, which is your aerobic. So that's your long, slow distance. You're utilizing oxygen and fat as your main, oxygen, I should say, is your main fuel source, or, you're pulling from your fat stores more, kind of once you burn through your sugar stores. And so those are kind of the main time domains. And so in order to have a robust energy systems, you got to touch on all of them. That's why, like, you might see people who your marathon runners, right? They're super skinny, they can run for days. But if you ask them to do like Fran in here, right? It's like they would really struggle because they're not super strong. They don't do a lot of sprinting. On the other end of the spectrum, you might have people who are really explosive, your Olympic weightlifters, right? Your 100-meter track runners. Those people are super duper explosive, can produce a ton of power. But if you ask them to go, run a 10K, it would be like you'd want to be like, dude, just stop. Like, I can't watch you do this anymore. And so in what we do in our fitness, because it's mapped around life, you want to be able to utilize all 3 energy stores to be able to do that. Okay. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is you have muscle groups, right? And so this is kind of where I think in some areas, the CrossFit Level 1 and how they explain programming can fall a little bit short. Now, to be fair, it's only a 2-day seminar and they have to kind of condense a lot, but they'll kind of say like, hey, this time domain is this energy system, this time domain is this energy system, which is a good place to kind of start. But great example, right? They might say, hey, a 25-minute AMRAP is, your aerobic system because it's over 20 minutes long. But if I said that 25-minute AMRAP comprised of wall balls, walking lunges, and a bike erg, at that point, it's not really aerobic. It's more of like a lower body muscle endurance workout because you're doing the same movement patterns and the same muscles for basically the entire 25 minutes. And so that's what the other part that comes into the equation is your muscle groups, and is it looking to build endurance? Is it looking to build strength, right? I could have a 20-minute AMRAP or I'm sorry, a 20-minute EMOM, let's say, where it starts with a run and then you do a squat clean, and we're building throughout the course of the EMOM. And so that's a strength-based a workout. So what does all that mean, right? When you get into class, if it's designed well, and I'm biased and I think ours are designed well, throughout the week, you have to vary or what's called undulate your time domains as well as the demands on the body. And so because of that, if you were to have the same time domain and the same demands on the body throughout the week, that's where overuse injuries can occur, right? So if every workout during the we've heard this from members before, I don't really like the short workouts. I only like the long ones. Can we do more of those? And it's like, if I only gave you long workouts every single day, we wouldn't be building strength. We wouldn't be, your aerobic system might get better, but you wouldn't be building the high-end power output that would allow you to like turn and run a sprint with your kids or get involved in like a potato sack race at like a family event or something like that. And so if we're not touching on those things, then you plateau. Prime example is a company like Orange Theory, right? That's their whole premise is around, being in that orange zone. Well, if you don't lift the weights, you plateau. And so that's why you have to vary what you're doing throughout the week. And we try to do our best to puzzle piece everything, right? It's not perfect because there's 7 days in a week. And CrossFit or functional fitness can be tough at times because there's so many movements and movement patterns to get into. But with that in mind, there's a desired stimulus, to use the word that Scott used, from a workout. And so if I write up a workout that's heavy back squats to start and then a 6-minute workout at the back end, that's supposed to be a sprint. And the reason why it's supposed to be a sprint is because we're working on something specific in that workout. And then the next day, maybe it's long, and then the next, so it all puzzle pieces together. And so what people fall victim to is they want to get that RX on the board. And so a great example, if I have a 3-round workout, I hear that. Hopefully you guys don't hear too much.
Maker.
So if I have a 3-round workout, it's supposed to be a sprint, but the weight in the workout's heavy for me. And so it's supposed to be done in, let's say, 6 minutes or less, but it takes me 12. Now I've completely missed the desire stimulus for that workout. And although that might not be a big deal on that particular day, really, it is a big deal in the course of the week because now it's like I'm spilling over into energy systems or muscle groups or demands on what's called my central nervous system that might have demands in those areas later in the week as well. And now I'm dipping too many times into into that energy system or those muscle groups or what's asked of my central nervous system. And now I can't get what's the desired result across the course of the entirety of the program. And so really at the end of the day, guys, if you're a member at one of our classes, the goal is the stimulus, okay? Now, to be fair, some people who are brand new to fitness, getting that sprint stimulus is really hard. They actually might not even be able to, right? Like if I'm brand new and I can't even do a lunge at body weight, like I struggle with that. I'm probably not strong enough to get a sprint stimulus yet. And so I need to build some strength. But the goal should be to shoot to get whatever the desired stimulus is from that workout. And I know our coaches explain this to people. And so if you're a member, leaving your ego aside and being able to ask your coach, even if you're unsure, hey, I can do the RX weight or I can do the RX plus or CRX weight. What are we trying to get out of this workout? And if the coach is like, okay, this is what we're trying to get out of it, or it's a 20-minute workout, like, and it has squat cleans in it because that's something we'll do at our CrossFit gyms. Hey, it should be something you should move relatively easy with quick singles because you want to kind of keep moving throughout the course of the 20 minutes. So you kind of get that aerobic stimulus and it's like, okay, then I probably shouldn't do CRX, right? Or if you're super strong and it's like, okay, I could do it. So I know that was kind of a long way to answer Scott's question, but I wanted to provide some background and context that to boil it all down, guys, the goal is the stimulus. And so listen to your coaches, ask your coaches if you're not sure, and shoot for that, because that's what's going to continue to allow you to make progress. And then as you get better, then it's like, okay, well, now the RX is like falling into that category. Let me do that. So hopefully does that make sense?
That makes sense. I feel like it's super common to see in the gym too.
Super
Like,
common.
I know me personally, after coming back, for those of you who don't know, I took a very long hiatus from station athletics. Nothing against the community. It's just did sports, kind of felt that I want to do more sports specific stuff. So I was gone for a while, like 8 years. Took a year off from like going hard for competition after I graduated from school, and now I'm back and I'm like, I want to start competing again. I want to
Yeah.
start getting back into it. And I feel like even me just recently, I had that happen with a workout last week where it was, is it snatches or clean and a jerk, clean
Yeah.
and jerk with the, what's it called? It's dumbbell.
Okay, dumbbell clean and jerks.
Dumbbell clean and jerks. Sorry, I'm still getting back into the terminology of everything too. But yeah, I went too heavy. Straight up. I said I can do the RX weight. This will be easy for me. And after the first round, I was like, dang, this is a lot harder than I thought. And I had to drop weight in the middle of my workout, which kind of sucked, but at the same time, I got a good workout from it. And I feel like that happens all the time throughout gyms.
Oh, but to give you some credit is like you at least noticed like, all right, bit off more than I can chew for this workout, because we did dumbbell clean and jerks this week. I don't know when this is coming out, but as we're filming, we did it this week. And so like, let's use that workout as an example. Like that particular workout had double unders, dumbbell hang clean and jerks, and a run. Like that workout shouldn't have been taking people longer than 12 minutes, maybe 14 minutes at the max. And so it's like, if you start the first round and you're like, this is going to take me 15 plus minutes, drop the weight. Right. And so there's nothing wrong with that, dropping the weight to make sure you get the stimulus, because listen, we want you guys to push yourselves. And so if you're like, yeah, I can do the RX weight, there's nothing wrong with like trying it. But then if it's like, yep, I'm going to totally miss what we're shooting for here, like dropping the weight, changing the movement up, that's definitely the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got next?
All right. We've had two very complicated questions to start off. So we're going to simple it down as simple as it can be. So we have, how can you build muscle at an older age, 60 plus specifically?
So I don't know who asked this question, so I apologize. Can't give credit.
Thank you to whoever asked it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Honestly, the brutal answer, it's really hard to do it. If you are older than 60, and this process happens well before 60, I don't know the exact numbers. It's kind of varied on what I've seen. Around 35, 40, somewhere between 35 and 45, like muscle just starts to degrade. It just does. You don't have as much testosterone in your body. You don't have as much, not just testosterone, but the hormones around building muscle. And so if you don't exercise, things start to fall off a cliff. So most of what happens at those advanced ages, 60 plus, is mostly fighting off that degrade as much as possible. Especially because I recently finished a book, Outlast, by I'm forgetting the author's name now. Shoot, it's gonna come to me later. Peter Attia. I'm pretty sure I hit that right. And he talked about like it like falls off a cliff after 75 years old, like crazy. And that's why if you've tracked the metrics, one of my PT client, Diane, who's 62, shout out Diane, she just sent me something from him through Instagram where he went over the deaths per 1,000 from falls. And it's like, as you get into like 70s, it's like, it just jumps, right? And a lot of that is around a lack of strength, right? If you don't have strength, you don't have as good of balance. You can't catch yourself if you trip. And so what happens is you fall, and when you fall, you hurt yourself because your bones aren't as strong too. That's the other part. If you're not lifting weights, you don't have as good of bone density. So really at the past the age of 60, it's really more maintaining muscle than anything else. Now, if you're someone who's severely detrained, like I'm 60 and I haven't worked out in my adult life, then yes, you could probably build a little bit of muscle because Definitely strength. You can build strength for sure. Maybe a little bit of muscle just because it's like your body is not used to that. But for the general public, you're really just fighting off muscle degrade more than anything else. With that being said, though, it's still super important to do because, like I mentioned very briefly, there's also the bone density of it. And really, the only real way to build bone density strength is through lifting loads. And so, specifically for women, especially because there's osteoporosis issues with women as they age, being able to get on some sort of strength training program to maintain that is super important because not just is it nice to be strong in the gym because it builds confidence, but more so, like I said, with falls and quality of life, that's something that you need to include in your regimen in order to maximize that.
I have no comments. I know nothing about.
JJ's
Being
so close to 60.
All I know is that I feel like it's something that people look over. It's very common for people to look over is that we are the oldest as a race, as a species that we've ever been
Sure.
ever.
Well, and unfortunately, it is starting to go backwards though. And I think a lot of that is because of the obesity epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. We have another Nicole Y question.
Okay. Nicole sent a lot. Nicole, so she was like all over it. It was awesome.
What are the benefits of heavy lifting / low reps versus light / high reps?
Okay. So classic bodybuilding wants you to, they kind of look at lighter weights, higher reps. So if you were to go to like an exercise science class in college or even just do like a certified personal training certification, they basically break it down where it's like, hey, reps in a range of 2 to 4 build overall strength, power and strength. Reps 4 to 8 build strength, and then reps 8+ is more like endurance or something like that. And then they'll also go over loads where it's like, hey, if you're lifting in 30 to 40%, you're building power. If you're lifting in 60 to 80%, you can build muscle size. And if you're 80% plus, you're building raw strength. So there's benefits to doing both. Really, a lot depends on your goals. And so the benefits to lower weights, higher loads is to build overall strength. Okay. So I mentioned with the question about the older population, bone density, stuff like that, you have to use loads that are challenging in order to build that bone density, right? And so if you want to build overall strength, and how your brain communicates with your muscles through what's called motor neurons and the communications between your brains and the muscles, how to contract your muscles, because basically based on a load, your brain has to communicate with your muscles, how hard to contract, how many muscle fibers to recruit, to retract. You want to have the ability to be very coordinated between those. And a lot of that can occur at higher loads. Now the benefits of the lower weights is, you can do more reps at them. And so if your goal is more endurance based, right, you have to, and I want to build muscle endurance, you have to do a lot of contractions to build the endurance in those muscles. Similarly, if the goal is to build size, basically the best way to build size is muscle breakdown. So you have to, in order to accomplish hypertrophy, which is the building of muscle, you have to have a couple of different factors. And one of them is like mechanical breakdown. So it's like your muscles go to failure, right? And your ability to lift a weight is going to occur much sooner at a heavier weight than it is at a moderate or lighter weight. And so incorporating those in your program are going to help build muscle size. Now, what your goals are will dictate how much you do of each, right? So if I'm a bodybuilder, a lot more of my stuff is going to be around the muscle hypertrophy side. If I'm an endurance athlete, probably much of my lifting might be, well, I don't want to say them necessarily because you're getting a lot of it with your sport. So let's stick to the bodybuilding. That's going to be a lot of the hypertrophy side. If I'm an Olympic weightlifter, a lot of mine is going to be to the lower rep side because I have to build strength at a certain size. That's the other thing, right? That's why you see these guys who it's like, yeah, they weigh 170 pounds and they're cleaning 400, right? It's because that's where a lot of their training goes to build that power and that strength. For the general population, you want to kind of fluctuate between both. Now, you don't necessarily have to lift a 1 rep max all the time, right? That's why like in our cycles, we're progressing to we'll test 1 lift every 6 weeks to track progress. But at the same time, in my opinion, in order for overall life, you don't want to kind of live in one zone. Again, just to go back to the stimulus question Scott had, there's benefits to fluctuating back and forth. And so that's why in our gyms, we do fluctuate back and forth. But hopefully, Nicole, that kind of answered your question, the benefits of each side of the spectrum. So guys, hopefully you took some things away from that. That was actually kind of fun. I liked that. So we're going to be throwing that in periodically. So as always, guys, like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram. Give us a 5-star rating on the podcast platform we listen on. We'll see you at the gym.